Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my November marked as to read video. In the month of November, I marked a total of 22 books as to read on Goodreads. It was a very good month for finding books that I was very excited about to click the to read button on Goodreads. So let's jump straight in and talk about all 22 books that I was inspired to mark as to read. The first book I want to talk about is Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. So this book I saw on an article on the Goodreads blog about books that you should read when you finish Stranger Things. I haven't watched Stranger Things. We all know I don't watch any of the popular shows because I just am so behind with all popular TV. So I haven't seen Stranger Things, but I looked at this blog post and this book that I saw on there looked very interesting. It's an adult horror, but it surrounds a group of people who were a group of like teen detectives when they were teenagers, and then it's like 15 years or something around that in the future, and they're no longer friends and no longer teen detectives, but they all come back together, I think, to find out what's been causing them. They've all had nightmares for years, and there's weird, like maybe some paranormal type things going on, and they're all trying to figure out, I think, what has happened to them in the intervening years that's kind of caused all this to happen, or what happened back when they were the teen detectives. Teen detectives is basically the thing that made me want to read this, and I love the idea that it's about what's become of the teen detectives when they're adults. That's just a really interesting concept. So it just sounded really, really interesting, and like definitely something that would be interesting to read. Next, I have The Haunting of Ashbourne House by Darcy Coates. This one I actually just saw a picture of the cover on Pinterest, and so I looked into the book then on Goodreads, and this is another adult like mystery horror type book. This one's just really basically surrounding a haunted house. I believe it follows a girl who, I think like her aunt or her grandmother or something owned this big, well, I presume Ashbourne house, and the people in the town, it's like on the outskirts of the town, and no one was ever allowed in the house, and the grandmother or aunt or whoever she is never left the house, and there's all like this mystery around the house and like whisperings about what goes on there. And then this woman dies and the main character inherits the house, and she is in kind of fallen on bad times and can't afford to refuse the house because she can't afford to live otherwise. So she takes the house and starts to kind of unravel the mystery of kind of what is going on with this house. Basically anything to do with a haunted house is right up my alley. It sounds like it could be quite gothic, which is, I'm really into gothic books, so it just sounded really interesting. Next is Get It Started by Morgan Burke. This is a young adult mystery thriller that surrounds a group of like really privileged teenagers who all go to this like prep school when someone, I think, is murdered, and it mirrors a murder that happened years previously. And it's kind of, I think you know that it's someone from this group of kids or from this school who is the murderer, but you don't know who it is. It just sounded really interesting. I'm really into kind of cheesy YA thrillers, and that's what this sounded like, so I definitely want to check it out. I heard about this one over on Kelly's Book Spills channel. She was doing, I think it was a book haul, and she talked about this, and it just sounded really interesting, so I marked it as to read. Next, from that same video from Kelly's Book Spill, I also saw The Bakersville Dozen by Christina McBride. This is another, I think, YA mystery thriller type book, and I think this one surrounds a group of 13, like again, privileged kids who were all involved in some kind of scandal, and then one of them died, I think, a while ago, and then now the others are starting to slowly die, and I think the main character is one of these 13 people, and she's being enticed into this like scavenger hunt type of game, but people are being killed off and she needs to win the game or something. I don't really know. That's all. It's a bit confusing, but I'm into any kind of YA thriller with privileged kids and murders and scavenger hunt games. That's really interesting as well, so it definitely sounds like something I would enjoy. So I'm really interested in cheesy YA thrillers, in case you couldn't tell. Next we have Toil and Trouble, 16 Tales of Women and Witchcraft, which is a YA anthology that's being edited by Tess Sharp and Jessica Spotswood. This is something I saw on Twitter, and it's coming out in like late 2018, but I was super excited about it. If you've been watching my channel, you know witches is a massive, massive buzzword of mine, and so a YA anthology about witches and women and like those kind of themes sounds amazing and like something I would definitely want to read, so I'm actually really excited for this anthology to come out next year. Next, I have The Life We Bury by Alan Eskens. So this is one that Peter Likes Books was talking about on his channel and said it was a really, really great mystery. And then I was looking into it on Goodreads and I saw that Lisa from over at Books and Smiles had also rated this 5 stars. So that immediately intrigued me. And this sounds really interesting. It's about a person, a man I think, who for, I think it's a college assignment, has to find and interview a stranger. And so he ends up interviewing this man who was, I think he's a Vietnam veteran who was also convicted of raping and murdering, I don't know, one person or several people. And he's about to die, and he's been moved from the prison into a nursing home to like live out his final days or whatever. And he ends up interviewing this man and kind of trying to reconcile the two sides of this person as being quite a war hero in Vietnam, but also being a rapist and murderer, and kind of trying to uncover what went on with him. Sounds really interesting. Like I said, Peter had good things to say about it, and then Lisa gave it 5 stars. So yeah, this one sounds really, really interesting. Now, a couple of months ago, Lisa did an adult psychological thrillers recommendations video, and I watched that video, and I adore Lisa, as you know, and I put a lot of faith in her thriller recommendations. And so literally every book from that recommendations video that I hadn't already read, I immediately marked as to read. So the next 8 books that I'm going to talk about are all from that video of Lisa. So let's jump in and talk about those 8 books. First, we have The Gift by Louise Jensen. So this is one about a woman who gets, I think it's a donor heart, from someone who's died, and after she gets this like heart donation, she becomes quite close with the donor's family, and then she starts to discover that there's maybe some weird things going on with this family, like the girl who died's sister is missing, and then family's not really saying like where she is, and then the girl who died's boyfriend is a little bit weird, and the whole thing just sounds really creepy and like a really good time. Next is The Stepmother by Claire Sieber. So this one is about 2 adult people who both have teenage children who get married and are trying to live with this kind of blended family. And I think the main character, stepdaughter, is like, they don't get along, and this woman has this deep secret from her past that she doesn't want anyone to find out about because it could tear the kind of family apart. So I know about it, but Lisa recommended it and it sounds really interesting. Next, we have Lie With Me by Sabine Durant. This one is one of those books that has a really vague synopsis, and I'm not 100% sure what it's about. From what I can gather, it seems to be about the lies that we tell, like the little kind of white lies that we tell to other people when we're talking about our lives, to kind of maybe make it seem like our lives are a little bit better, or we have our lives more together than what we really do, and about how those lies can kind of snowball, and like that everyone is kind of lying a little bit and you don't really know what's going on in people's lives. I think that's kind of what it's about. That's all I can really gather from the kind of vague synopsis that there is on Goodreads, but Lisa recommended it and that is enough for me. Next is The Other Child by Lucy Atkins. So this one is about a woman who meets this man. She already, I think, has an 8 or 9-year-old child, and then she meets this new man who's like a really affluent pediatric heart surgeon, I think, and then they like instantly connect and form this really like quick relationship, and she then becomes pregnant, and then he gets offered a job. So I think maybe they're based in England, I think, and then he gets offered a job in Boston in the US. So they're relocating to the US with her child and her new baby, and they move into this really like affluent suburb in the US, and then there's weird stuff going on. Like she feels like she's always being watched, and the neighbors are weird, and her husband is becoming really distant, and she's got this new baby coming, and it's all just really sinister stuff going on. Again, sounds like a good time. Next is My Husband's Son by Deborah O'Connor. This one sounds really interesting. It's about a woman whose child was murdered, and then she meets a man whose son disappeared, and they kind of bond over their shared loss, and they form this relationship. And then I think they've been together for a while when the main character comes across this boy that she is convinced is her husband's disappeared son, but he is convinced that it's not his son, and then she starts to feel that maybe he's hiding something. That sounds like a really interesting premise. Like I think that there could be really interesting ways this story could go, and I think that this is one of those books that's supposed to have a really massive twist in it, which everybody loves a twist, so I'm definitely interested in this one. Next is The Memory Watcher by Minka Kent. This is another one that sounds really interesting. It's about a woman who a few years previously gave up her daughter for adoption, and then online she finds the accounts of this family that adopted her daughter, and she starts to kind of stalk this family online, you know, watching her biological child grow up online. And then one day their online profile has just completely disappeared and she can't find anything more about the daughter, and so she applies to be the nanny for her biological daughter, and I think she gets this position and then kind of inserts herself into their lives, and obviously she's lying about who she is, but then she starts to discover that there's maybe some secrets going on within this family as well. That whole dynamic, it kind of sounds like a bit of a twist on kind of like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, if you ever saw that movie, but with the added thing that she actually is the biological mother of this child. It all sounds very twisted, and I love a twisted read, so this one definitely sounds like a good time. Next we have Just What Kind of Mother Are You by Paula Daly. So this one is about a woman who, I think she's looking after her children but also her best friend's child. I think it's in a park one day when her best friend's daughter goes missing. I think it's her preteen kind of age daughter goes missing. And she obviously feels very guilty that her best friend's child has gone missing while she was looking after her. But not only that, but she's also the second child to have gone missing within a very short period of time. And the other child has already turned up dead, I believe. So she starts to try to find out what's happening to get her friend's daughter back because of the guilt that she feels about her friend's daughter going missing while in her care. And then I think she starts to uncover, you know, all these deep secrets within the town that she lives in, and with all their friends and things like that. And it's a psychological thriller, and I love psychological thrillers. Next is Little Black Lies by Sandra Block. This is the last one from that recommendations video by Lisa, and this one is about a woman who, I think she's a resident at a psychological, asylum, a mental hospital, and she starts to have a connection with this patient who is a sociopath who murdered her mother, and it starts to raise questions for the main character about what happened to her mother, dead mother, years previously. And then there's also the added, I think, element that her adoptive mother has dementia and is slowly, you know, slipping away from her. So there's a lot of kind of stuff obviously about mothers and daughters and that type of thing. Again, I love psychological thrillers, so this is definitely one I want to check out in future. Next, we have a book that Molly from over at Molly Reads talked about on her channel, and that is Melina by Julie Bunton. So this one is about two teenage girls who form this friendship, and you know from the get-go that one of the teenage girls is, I think within the year, is going to be dead. And so I think you go back and you kind of follow them throughout this year of forming this friendship and becoming friends, and what happens for this other one to die. She's not murdered or anything. I think it says that she drowns in 6 inches of water, but I think it's got a lot of friendship themes around, because I think this girl who dies is kind of a bit manic and is pill popping and a bit you know, of a party girl and that type of thing, and it's about the main character being drawn into her world and what happens. And I find anything with that kind of friendship themes and the things you do when you have a connection with someone and you want to be their friend and that type of thing, I just find super, super interesting. So this one definitely sounded like something that I would personally find really enjoyable. Next we have Deadly Cool by Gemma Halliday. This is one that Michaela from Love Michaela Eve talked about on her channel. This is another YA kind of mystery thriller about a girl who finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her with, I think, the president of the high school's chastity club, and he is then named the #1 suspect in a town murder, but she knows that he's innocent, so she's now trying to help clear the name of her boyfriend, who she's just found out is cheating on her. And then it says something about a bad boy coming on the scene, so I presume there's going to be a romance, and it just sounds again, kind of a cheesy YA thriller, but I love me some cheesy YA thrillers, as I've already said in this video, so this definitely sounded like something that I would want to read. Next, I want to talk about The Darkest Secret by Alex Marwood. So this is one that My Books Are Me recommended. And this is another adult thriller, and this one is about a 3-year-old girl who's an identical twin who goes missing. And then I think you're following it in dual timeline, so you're following the weekend where this twin goes missing, but you're also following it 12 years later over the weekend of the funeral of her father. So I think you're kind of going back and you're seeing the two weekends simultaneously and trying to discover what happened to this little girl who went missing all these years ago. So again, it's a psychological thriller, and that is pretty much all I need to know to want to read a book. Next, I want to talk about Now Is Everything by Amy Giles. So this one I saw on a Goodreads blog post about the hottest YA, I think it was, of November. And I had a quick look at it, and I saw that like 70% of the early ratings of this book were 5 stars, and like another 20% were 4 stars. So the early ratings of this were very, very positive, and it's a YA contemporary, but like a YA contemporary, dark contemporary that deals with a lot of like important, like heavy topics. So I believe it's about a girl who is living in an abusive family, and she's got a sister, and she's trying to protect her sister from their father. And then she's also got this boyfriend that she's forbidden to see. And then I think there is this one event that happens that ended up causing her, I think, to try and take her own life. So obviously this all is assuming have trigger warnings for like abuse and suicidal thoughts and all of that type of thing. It sounds like a very, very heavy YA. And then I think it's about all the people that get involved after she tries to take her life, like counselors and police and things like that, trying to discover why, like what brought her to this moment. That just sounds really, really interesting. As I've said before, I do enjoy some YA contemporary, but I generally enjoy contemporary more that has, I don't enjoy the fluffier contemporary as much usually. I generally prefer books that have some kind of more like deeper message behind them, and that definitely sounds like this type of book. Next is Bonfire by Kristen Ritter. So I'm sure you've probably all heard about this book. The reason I marked it as to read is because it's getting a lot of buzz at the moment. If you didn't know, Kristen Ritter is an actress. I'll put a picture of Kristen Ritter on the screen as well as the cover of the book so you can see who I'm talking about. And she has released a adult thriller novel. It's about, I think, a woman who has escaped her small town and forged a life for herself, and then she's investigating some kind of scandal within the town. I don't think it's like a murder type scandal. It's like a political scandal of some type, I think, or environmental political scandal, something like that. And she has to go back to her small town to, you know, investigate this case, and that's all I really know about it. But I say it's actually been getting a lot of buzz, and I've heard some pretty positive reviews of it. Obviously it's getting buzz because Kristen Ritter is an actress, but the buzz has worked because it's made me want to read it. Next, I want to talk about Little Broken Things by Nicole Bart. So this one is a mystery type story about a woman who has been quite estranged from both her sister and her mother. And one day her sister, she gets like a weird message from her sister, and then her sister turns up and hands over this young girl to her that she doesn't know anything about, and her sister literally like hands the girl over to her, says to keep her safe and not to tell their mother about her. And then she disappears, and this woman now has this little girl that she doesn't know anything about, and obviously I guess it's trying to figure out who this little girl is and what's going on with her sister and this little girl and her mother and all of these types of things. This was on, I'm not sure if I already said this, did I? That it was on a Goodreads post about November's hottest reads, and I just saw it and the synopsis sounded really interesting, and so I marked it as to read. Next is yet another recommendation by Lisa. This is What She Knew by Gillian McMillan. This is another thriller novel. It's about a woman whose son goes missing when they're in the park one weekend, and it's about her, I think, just basically trying to find out what happened to her son. And I think once again this is the type of story where she starts to discover that maybe it's the people closest to her that are the people she should worry about most. Again, this is kind of a tropey thriller. Like, I think it's hard these days with thrillers. They all kind of follow this, you know, like a handful of general premises that there are kind of out there these days, and you know, they're trying to like make an original storyline out of them. But I just love me a good thriller, and Lisa recommended this one, and so I want to read it. And the final book I want to talk about is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Now, this is probably the one that I am most excited about out of all of the books in this video, because this just sounds like something that is right up my street. It is it's an Agatha Christie style novel about a group of people who get together at this party, and one of them, the like daughter of the family, is murdered, and it's about this guy trying to solve her murder. But the twist on it is that every day, it's kind of like a Groundhog Day situation, that every day he wakes up and it's the day of this case again. But on top of that, he also wakes up every day in a different guest's body. And so he's a different guest each day, reliving this crime and trying to figure out what happened to this girl who was murdered. That just sounds so interesting, and like it would be such a good read. And I'm actually really excited about this book because it just sounds like something that I would really, really love. So those are all of the books that I marked as to read in November. If you learned anything from this video, is that I love psychological thrillers. I don't read a lot of them. I don't think I read enough of them, but I love them. It is literally my favorite genre, is like mystery thriller. And so every time I hear about someone say that a mystery thriller is good, it just makes me want to read it because I really do just love mystery thrillers. So I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I talked about today, if you have any thoughts, any books that you're getting excited about, that you've been marking as to read. I would love to chat down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That's all I've got for this video today. Bye guys.